Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of the Bobby Bones Show.
We're so thrilled to have back on the show an incredible journalist, singer, songwriter. He's also the editorial director for Premier Guitar Magazine, but he's got a new film, Ted Drozdowski. My friend, Ted, good to see you.
You too, Eric. Thank you so much for having me. I love this show.
You know what? It's incredible, Ted, to have you back on. You and I have been friends for years, but I mean, you have a film.
I have a film.
And it's incredible.
Sometimes that's my reaction too. I have a film.
But I mean, it's like, once again, you and I and Richie Owens and everything, we've known each other a long time, but it's like, but this is a huge body of work to where not only have you written the screenplay, been featured in the film, but also created a soundtrack.
Yes.
Let's talk about this.
I feel like this movie is what I've been rehearsing for the last 30 years of my life.
Right.
Basically.
Yeah.
It's just this culmination of the music that I've been playing, studying, loving. The culture that I've been playing, studying, and loving. Southern culture, blues culture, early rock culture.
Right.
It's just all woven into here. Spirituals, country, folk, rock. There's elements of everything I love in this movie. And I was able to pull it together, and sometimes, frankly, I'm a little surprised. But I'm entirely delighted. I'm entirely delighted, and the process felt natural.
Well, and also with the river, what I found very interesting about it, Ted, is that, and certainly you're a music historian, but to where you're combining the stories of 3 different rivers.
Yes. I mean, the movie is called The River, A Songwriter's Stories of the South.
Right.
And it talks about the lore, locales, and the people, the lives, along the Tallahatchie, the Cumberland, and the Mississippi rivers.
Right.
And that's all woven together. The backbone is 10 songs, 9 of which I wrote. One is an old public domain service song. And knitting that backbone together are these spoken sections where we talk about the people involved, the places involved.
Which also
my
you narrated
personal
it.
experiences. Yes, I also narrated it.
You're the narrator.
Yeah. I mean, it's a crazy movie. It's a full-length feature film, and it's cultural history, it's storytelling, it's music performance, it's aerial dance, because we have aerialists. And I wanted to work with the aerialists because I think aerial movement and the movement itself adds a different level of emotional nuance that words and music can't get to alone.
I agree.
And then we work collaboratively very often with this group called Darling Lucifer Productions, who
bring
are
that up.
wonderful psychedelic light artists.
Right.
If you haven't seen their work, think about the Fillmore in 1967.
I know, that's what, and it so reminded me of that, to where, when you're watching the trailer and you're watching the film, it's like, with that backdrop, it just adds to all of it. And also, I've got to bring this up because you won't, it features your band, Coyote Motel.
Yes.
Which, you were so well known for the Scissorman group and had great songs and a number of, local hits with that band. But it's like, but this album, I think it's the best work you've put out, Ted, with Coyote Motel.
In all modesty, I have to agree.
Yeah, I'm sorry, because I mean,
No,
listen to the
seriously,
tracks
it is,
because
yeah,
because
I
and
feel
once
that way.
again, kind of like the film, with the river, it encompasses rock and blues and spoken word poetry and everything else within one soundtrack.
Yes, the way I explain the sound of the band to people who are curious about it is that imagine that the band and Pink Floyd merged, but that there was a male and female singer.
Right.
So we have that wonderful dynamic between male and female voices as well.
And that's an add-on to the band.
Yes. Luella, who used to have a band here in Nashville called Luella and the Sun, who are my favorite local band, and she was my favorite singer in Nashville as well. We hired Luella to perform on the first Coyote Motel album, 2019's Coyote Motel.
Right.
And she had a good time and asked if she could join the band. Wow. So if your favorite singer wants to join the band, she joins the band.
It's not a bad thing. And also, what's so incredible, Ted, is that her voice and your voice match so well. And then also with the instrumentation of the band, I mean, you guys, it's tight. And you recorded this soundtrack in 2 days?
We recorded the soundtrack in 2 days, yes.
And you worked with a top-notch producer.
We did. We worked with Mike Purcell here at Berry Hill at County Q. And Mike was great. And we'd worked with Mike before. We have 3 previous recordings out, and Mike had mastered and mixed all those.
Right.
And he'd been talking with us about trying to get us in the studio. And we did this is a crowd-funded film, so we were able to raise the budget to go into a very nice Nashville studio, work with Mike, who is already a great friend, and then, as it turns out, one of the most clever and imaginative engineers I've encountered. He was really delightful. And over the years, I've been in a lot of studios with different people, and I was so happy to work with Mike. He just killed it. He just killed it.
And
it
the
was
mix,
Captured
the mixes
everything.
are so good.
Yes.
On every song.
Yes.
And and that's what I told you too. And obviously the river has already garnered 5 awards, which I think is going to
Yes.
be many more this year, and the release coming out of the album and the screening here in Nashville in March.
Yes, March 19th at the Belcourt.
But it's like, but I think you're going to garner so many awards. But I thought also with the soundtrack, Ted, is that it lends itself to other TV shows and films
Well,
because of the depth of the music.
that would certainly be nice.
With this film, you had some help from Richie.
Yes, Richie Owens, who is a great musician. And that's one of the things. He's a great musician. He's a great video editor. And when we were on the sound stage at Nas over in Laverne shooting this on the sound, because we did a couple of days in a large scale sound stage to shoot this.
Right, I
'cause
saw
we
the
had
pictures.
The lights, the dancers, the whole thing. We really needed a lot of space. Richie was on fire. I had never really seen him working as a director before. He was coming up with all these great ideas on the fly, super impressive. And then, of course, you know, we've known each other for about 10 years. We met at a gig in Memphis years ago.
Yeah.
And bonded because we were sort of the 2 slide guitar guys on the show. And Richie and I, once we did all the filming, including this marathon trip, we drove down through Memphis and North Mississippi.
I was gonna bring
through
that up.
Arkansas to
And through
Clarksdale.
Helena?
Yes, Helena. Yeah, we did a 36-hour drive where we shot for 24 straight hours.
And you guys were still speaking when you were done.
Indeed. And not only that, we were still speaking after we spent 400 hours in the editing suite, shoulder to shoulder, working on this film afterwards. It has so many beautiful, complex cuts and dissolves.
But you know, it puts together so many things too. You know, and you and I were talking about it, Ted, to where, you know, when you started out scripting this, you were envisioning it to be a stage, you know, like a live stage production.
I was, because for a number of years I'd been collaborating with Suspended Gravity Circus, who are a wonderful aerial dance company here in town, and with Darling Lucifer Productions. And I thought we should really just kind of, and the band was sounding great, like we should really just put our forces together and do this wonderful show.
Right.
And everyone was into it. And then, of course, COVID came,
Yes.
which derailed that. And then when the band got back together after not rehearsing for 14 months, and we started to sound great instantly,
Right.
you know, after a 14-month break, I'm like, I have to bring this back to life. And the stage show just felt impractical. But the idea of raising money and making a film, for some reason, didn't seem impractical.
But I gotta hand it to you though, Ted. I mean, you know, with everything else you've got going, you know, certainly, you know, with playing shows, with, you know, heading up all the stuff with Premier Guitar Magazine, you pivoted. And, you know, a lot of people would have taken that and gone, okay, I'm done with it. Because, you know, it's just like anything with writing.
Yeah.
You know, and you and I write a lot, you know, but it's like, you know, a lot of people start but never finish. You took that as a catalyst to move forward. And I mean, to me, watching it too, it's almost like Cirque du Soleil dancing with music and story. It like encompasses all these things within a 68-minute film.
It truly does. It has a lot of dimension to it. And I really don't think I've seen another movie quite like it.
No.
And I'm very proud of that, too. I've really tried to keep all the work I've done, even though I've mostly been in the roots genre, or
Right.
the roots area, I've always tried to keep it on the cutting edge of the roots genre, which might at first sound contradictory, but it really isn't. And if you think about it, when you go back to roots music, especially early blues guys,
Right.
they've always been on the cutting edge. They were early adopters of electric guitars. The Resonator,
Right.
you know, was a blues and bluegrass instrument back then. You
Well,
know?
and also one of your favorites, RL.
Oh yeah, RL. He was fantastic. He really was. And what a great storyteller too.
Right.
You know,
But,
RL
I mean,
Burnside.
but don't you feel like you're doing the same now with you're kind of merging all of your passions to create this great film? And I think, you know, like you and I were talking about before we came in studio, Ted, the river, I think, is going to take on its own life, much like the music and everything. I mean, what do you hope that people take away from this? I mean, when it gets digital distribution, when it comes out and hits the masses, besides doing all the film festivals that you're constantly winning awards for, what do you hope viewers take from it?
Well, I hope that people are touched by it because I do think it has a real emotional depth and resonance.
Agree.
And in the memoir parts, I think I'm giving away a lot of myself as well. You know, and I think that's important. I think part of being an artist is being willing to open yourself up wide. That's one of the things I've always liked about people like Stevie Ray Vaughan, who is a 1,000% giver on stage, you know, and Springsteen and so many other people who really just open up their hearts.
Which is kind of interesting because you've interviewed a lot of these people over the past too.
I have, which is wonderful because you can get a lot of insight from that as well, and inspiration.
Thousands and thousands of articles and interviews to your credit.
But you know, my feeling is that if people see this movie, I hope they'll first be entertained. Second, that they'll come away with some sort of emotional gift or imparting, or they'll be able to relate to it emotionally. And I also think they're going to learn things about Southern culture, about blues and folk culture, in the areas that those rivers go through,
Right.
about the rivers themselves, you know, and maybe there's even some insights in there about life. Everyone I know who's seen the film so far has actually been pretty touched by the narrative and felt
Very.
that it really hit some important and interesting points. And I love that. I love that. To be able to do something that moves people, to me, is just the most important thing. And even just, you know, and putting aside the larger ambitions that I think I would ideally like to have for this project,
Right.
I just love that I'd be able to do the work and that now I can share the work.
Well, you know, and I've got to
that's
bring
the
this up,
goal.
though, now, too, Ted, to where doors that open that you did not even see, and now you've been asked to narrate other projects.
I have. I've been asked to do some narration.
Because you
which is
narrated this,
interesting.
and I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, and who would have thought that?
I, you know, I was the most affordable narrator we could find. So that certainly
And
led
the
me down
best
that
one for
path.
the project.
Yes, exactly. I knew the script well, you know, having revised it so many times.
Right. 9 revisions.
9 revisions, yeah, 9 revisions. And it actually, that doesn't count the stage version.
Right.
You know, the
and
stage
hundreds
version.
of hours of editing.
Yes,
and
over
shooting.
400.
But
yeah,
it
lots of
feels so
shooting, B-roll.
cohesive when I watch it. It all feels cohesive, but I also can see, you know, parts of you and your influences in it too, Ted. I can
thank
see
you.
and your history and your family history, and like, you know, and we share, you know, having relatives as coal miners.
Well, speaking of family history and coal miners, one of the things that I did is I sourced 500 archival and licensed still and moving images for the talking parts,
Right.
the parts that I consider the Ken Burns sections. So the Ken Burns part, we have these wonderful images, and one of the images I found was a pair of abandoned boots from decades old at the St. Nicholas Coal Breaker in Pennsylvania, in Shenandoah, well, in Mount Carmel, I think, Pennsylvania, right near Shenandoah. My grandfathers worked at mines that fed that breaker. That was a really lucky find. But that one song in particular, Black Lung Fever.
Which is one of my favorites on the soundtrack.
Well, it's about my grandfathers both coming over from Poland and getting jobs in the coal mine here, and unfortunately not really making it past their early 50s.
But so many coal miners didn't.
Yeah, as so many coal miners didn't. You know, it's a tough job, and back then it was even tougher because there
Right.
were actually no controls.
But also, what a great tribute, you know, to those people and to your family, you know, to be able to show this history and really bring it to life through music and through film.
I was
I mean,
delighted.
you're combining like all your passions into one, Ted.
It is true. I was really delighted to be able to do that piece and also, you know, really touch on some family history and do something that's vitally personal. And then there are other nuggets, you know, along the way. Like, for example, Robert Gordon, who is a great writer and chronicler of life in Memphis,
Right.
Southern culture, music, has a great book on Stax. One of his collections, Memphis Rent Party, has a profile of a man named Ernest Willis. Ernest Willis lived under the Mississippi-Arkansas Bridge for decades. He made his living gleaning things from the river, junk that he would resell, catching buffalo, catfish, the whole deal. When the water would rise, his house was on pontoons. He would use his pickup truck to pull it up the embankment.
Wow.
And I read about him and enjoyed that so much that it inspired one of the songs from the movie, The River Runs Forever.
Oh, it's such a great song.
Which is not just about Ernest, and Llewellyn sings that beautifully, but it's not just
Beautiful
about Ernest. To me, it's also just about, it's a contemplation about life and death and impermanence and transcendence.
Right.
You know, and it's beautiful, and her performance of it makes it even more
Oh
beautiful.
my gosh. And also the guitar work, to where I know that you used some car amplifiers.
Yes, I love.
Which sound
Steve
incredible. And
Carr's
also
amps.
1 or 2 of your special guitars.
Yes, well, I used, for that one in particular, I used my Zuzu. And if you look up Zuzu guitars, you'll find that they're one-offs. He doesn't make any 2 guitars the same.
Right.
This one, the Green Monster, which if you show a clip at some time is probably in there, it has a mahogany body and neck hand-carved. It has parts of an old 1940s ash packing crate on top. He
Love it.
hand cuts his own frets, puts together his own pickups. You know, it's really a delightful instrument.
Well, and also your Dollycaster.
Oh,
and,
yes, the
and one
Dollycaster.
of my favorites, your pot.
Yes, the pot, a galvanized pot, cooking
That a
pot.
fan made for you.
Yes, yes. Mike Wendy, who's an artist from East Nashville, he just dropped it in my lap one day at a gig and said, hey, I made this for you. And it's a beautiful, for those of you who don't know what a diddley bow is, Bo Diddley got his name from that. And it's a 1-stringed primitive blues instrument that you play slide on. This one is in, maybe a 10-gallon galvanized pot. It's got an old tobacco barn stave, and I have a piece of pipe fitting for the bridge,
Right.
and it's got an old banjo tuner on top. Play it with a slide. I installed a old Telecaster pickup in that and had it wired up, and it's amazing. It has this incredible resonance. If you rap on the side, it'll literally come booming through the
just love it.
amplifiers. It's
But I'll
great.
tell you what, I mean, with Coyote Motel, with the soundtrack, and with the film and everything else, it's like, I think this is going to explode, Ted. I mean, I'm no psychic, but I'm telling you, I think that this is really going to like launch things in a whole other trajectory for you that you didn't even envision because the film is so good, the soundtrack is so good. You know, you've got the dancers, you got all of this involved. It's amazing. And you pulled this off.
It is kind of beautiful. It's everything I like in one place. You know, like musically, visually, for me, it's just, like I said, it's like the last 30 years of my life have been a rehearsal for this thing. You know, I just hope people will come see it at the Belcourt on the 19th here in Nashville.
I think people are going to want to see it everywhere. I think once you release it, you know, at the Belcourt, March 19th.
March 19th, the same date that the soundtrack comes out.
Right. I think that people are going to want to add the soundtrack, you know, to their playlist. You know, I would recommend vinyl. That's just me. And I think that it's going to have to go out on digital portals for people, you know.
Yes.
So to be able to watch this themselves and embrace it.
Yeah, we'd love to make sure we'd love to see it on a streaming service.
Well, I want to make sure for our viewers also, Ted, where should they go for the website, for the social media, for everything else? I know you've got, you know, Coyote Motel stuff and for yourself, but what about for the river?
Yeah, well, right now the website for Coyote Motel has been retooled. It's very river intensive. And we're going to be releasing song videos there as well, which are excerpts from the movies. So if people stay tuned to coyotemotel.com, they'll see that stuff.
Okay.
And you can also find us on X.
Yes, right.
You can find us on X.
What was once Twitter, the artist formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. You can find us there. You can find us on Instagram. And I'm just going to keep a steady flow of information out there because I'm really excited about sharing this with the world.
So have you added on an extra room for the awards? Because I think that, you know, at some point, you know, it's like, I don't know, you know, if it was me and I was getting 5 awards for a film, it's like, I'd have to pull a Flav and like wear one around my neck at a show.
I'm overwhelmed because we've barely started getting this thing out to film festivals. I'm so shocked. You know, we won Best International Feature at the Polish Film Festival recently, Polish International Film Festival. The Queen City Festival in Cincinnati gave us Best Experimental Film, Best Soundtrack, Best Original Soundtrack. You know, we have a bunch of official selections. We're going to be going to the Red Dirt Film Festival in April, and perhaps even playing there. We're going to see how that develops, but that would be nice. I'd love to bring the band out to some of these screenings of the film.
Well, I know also you're going to be doing, you know, solo interpretation of the songs and full band with Coyote Motel when possible.
Yes, that's definitely on the docket. And I love that too because I love to perform. You know, I mean, to me, it's all about sharing, and that's one of the things. I love talking to people. I love being able to tell them stories. I love being able to share songs with them that tell stories and that I think it might sound pretentious to enrich their lives, but I know that when I hear material like this, I feel that it benefits me as a human being.
I agree.
You know,
totally.
and I just think it helps me grow.
Well, and I'll tell you what, the story, I think our viewers are just going to love it when they can see it themselves. And obviously here in Nashville, they can go to the Belcourt, you know, to see the screening.
Yes.
But I think it's going to be going everywhere. With the river, you definitely want to go see this movie, the film, check out the soundtrack, Coyote Motel for the website right now.
Right.
But it'll be retail. I get bigger and better things coming. Ted, congratulations.
Thank you so much, Eric, and thank you for having me.
What an incredible accomplishment on everything you've done with this. Ted Drozdowski, The River. You want to check this out. You want to take a listen to the soundtrack. You're going to love it as much as I do.
Thanks,
Ted.
Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of a Bobby Bones Show.